Look, I've been a survival instructor for the Galactic Coalition for 17 cycles. 17. I've trained Corthians who breathe methane, guided Silurians through asteroid field evacuations, and just once helped a Plovaxian navigate a planet with actual weather. I thought I'd seen everything the universe could throw at someone trying not to die. Then Command assigned me to evaluate Marcus Webb. The human showed up to the briefing wearing what I can only describe as decorative foot coverings, and a shirt with faded symbols that read, "I survived Earth and all I got was this lousy t-shirt." Not armor, not even proper synthetic fiber designed for temperature regulation. Just cloth. Old cloth. "Instructor Vrel," he said, extending his hand in that bizarre gesture they insist on performing. "Looking forward to this." I stared at his appendage. 5 fingers, no claws, skin exposed to open air like he was asking the universe to take a swing at him. My own 4 arms instinctively drew back. "Cadet Webb," I managed, my translator struggling with his casual tone. "You understand this is a mandatory survival assessment on Korath 9? Class 12 Deathworld? The designation exists for a reason." "Yeah, read the brief." He smiled. Actually smiled. Those flat little teeth on display like he was attending a social gathering. "Sounds fun." "Fun," he said. "Fun. Korath 9 wasn't fun. Korath 9 was where the Coalition sent equipment testing drones that we fully expected to lose. Gravity at 1.4 standard. Atmosphere so humid it could drown a Tellurian. Predators that evolved specifically to kill things that thought they were safe. The survival rate for trained operatives was 63%, and that was with full gear. "You will receive standard emergency provisions," I explained, pulling up the holographic display. "Water purification unit, protein synthesizer, environmental shelter, class 3 plasma cutter for defense, medical nano suite and—" Actually, Marcus interrupted, raising one hand. I was wondering if I could skip the gear. My secondary hearts stopped. Just stopped functioning for a solid 3 seconds. "Excuse me." "The equipment," he repeated, slower this time like I was the one struggling with basic concepts. "Can I do this without it? More authentic that way." I looked at Commander Thalis, my supervisor, who was observing via holocom. Her bioluminescent patches flickered in what I'd learned to recognize as extreme confusion. "Cadet Webb," she said carefully, "the survival assessment is designed to test your ability to utilize provided resources in hostile conditions. Refusing equipment is not the point." "Right, but here's the thing." Marcus leaned against my desk, completely relaxed. "On the ship, heading toward a planet that had killed 12 qualified scouts last cycle. Back home we call this camping. My dad used to take me and my sister out into the Rockies. That's a mountain range. Every summer. No tech, just what we could carry. This honestly seems easier since Korath 9 has oxygen. I can actually breathe and nothing that'll give me Lyme disease." "Lyme disease?" I regretted asking immediately. "Bacterial infection from tiny parasites. Makes your joints swell up, sometimes attacks your nervous system. Really common in wooded areas back home." He said this like he was describing weather patterns. "But yeah, if it's cool with you folks, I'd rather do this old school, prove I can handle things with just the basics." Thalis's patches went dark. Complete shutdown of social signaling, which in her species meant she was either about to explode or was rethinking her entire career. Possibly both. "The minimum equipment requirement exists," I stated firmly, pulling up the regulations, "because anything less would be a violation of Coalition safety protocols, Section 7, subsection 43. Marcus finished. "Already checked. There's an exception clause for species with documented survival capabilities on equivalent or higher rated death worlds. Earth is rated Class 12. Korath 9 is also Class 12. I qualify." He'd done his research. This strange, soft-looking being, with his unprotected skin and his casual footwear, had actually read the entire regulation codex. "Even if you technically qualify under that exception," I said, my voice box clicking in agitation, "you understand that choosing to refuse equipment is spectacularly foolish?" "Instructor Vrel," With respect, I've been camping in worse conditions for fun since I was 8 years old. I'll be fine. That's how I ended up watching Marcus Webb step off the landing shuttle onto Korath 9's surface wearing exactly what he'd worn to the briefing, plus a small fabric bag he called a backpack, and a metal container full of water. That was it. That was his entire survival kit. The shuttle pilot, a sensible Cree named Jorlex, looked at me with all three eyes wide. Should we wait, in case he immediately dies? Coalition protocol requires we maintain orbit for the 72-hour assessment period regardless, I muttered, watching Marcus on the external cameras. He was stretching, like he'd just woken from sleep, not like he'd landed on a planet where the local flora could digest metal. All right, his voice came through the comm unit we'd insisted he at least wear. Where should I set up camp? Cadet Webb, standard procedure, is to locate the designated safe zone markers and establish your shelter in that perimeter. Nah, those markers look like they're in a valley. Valleys flood when it rains. I'm gonna find higher ground maybe near those rock formations to the west. The western formations are outside the safe zone, I said, my translator definitely catching the sharp edge in my voice. They are outside the zone because they are not safe. Cool. More private that way. I'll check in every 12 hours as required. Oh, and Instructor Vrel? What? Try not to worry too much. I really do know what I'm doing. The comm clicked off. He'd muted me. The human had actually muted his supervising instructor on a Class 12 Deathworld. Jorlex made a chittering sound. Laughter in his species. I've never seen anyone voluntarily choose certain death with such confidence, he said. He won't die, Commander Thalis said over the ship's comm, though she didn't sound convinced. Earth humans are surprisingly resilient. Reports from the war indicated they could survive injuries that would kill most species. Still, this seems excessive even for them. I pulled up the monitoring display, tracking Marcus's vital signs and location. Heart rate was elevated but steady. Respiratory function normal. He was walking toward the western rocks at a pace that suggested he was enjoying himself. First hour survival rate is 98%, I noted. It's the following 71 hours that concern me. Want to place a wager on how long he lasts? Jorlex asked. That would be inappropriate, I said automatically. 20 credits, says he calls for emergency extraction within 18 hours. I looked at the display. Marcus had reached the rock formations and was doing something with his hands, apparently examining the stone composition. 30 credits says he makes it to 36 hours but suffers significant injury, I replied. We both watched the screen. This was going to be a very long 3 days. Hour 3? And I was starting to think something had malfunctioned with our monitoring equipment. Marcus had constructed a shelter, not using the portable environmental unit we'd offered, obviously, because he'd refused that along with everything else sensible. No, he'd built one from branches, broad leaves from the local vegetation, and some kind of fibrous material he'd stripped from a vine-like plant. The structure looked primitive, almost insultingly simple, but when Korath 9's first evening rainstorm hit, and these weren't gentle showers, these were atmospheric dumps of water that could strip bark from trees. His little shelter shed the water perfectly. He'd angled it just right, created drainage channels, even elevated the floor slightly using flat stones. How did he know that plants' fibers wouldn't cause dermal irritation? I wondered aloud. Jorlex enhanced the camera feed. He tested it first. See that mark on his inner arm? He rubbed a small amount on his skin and waited. Basic contact allergy test. That's actually proper field xenobiology procedure. For someone without any equipment, he seems remarkably prepared. Marcus was now starting a fire. Without plasma igniters, without thermal charges. He had 2 pieces of wood and was rubbing them together with a curved technique that looked both practiced and absurd. That won't work, I said confidently. Friction fire starting requires extremely dry materials and specific wood density. Korath 9's humidity is... Smoke appeared. Actual smoke. No, I said. The smoke became flame. Small, careful, controlled flame. Absolutely not. Marcus fed the fire with progressively larger pieces of dried wood he must have collected earlier. building it up until he had a sustainable heat source. Then he pulled out the metal water container and placed it near the flames. "He's boiling water," Thalis observed, her patches cycling through colors I'd never seen before. "For purification. Using thermal convection instead of the standard UV filtration we would have provided." "Commander, I may have underestimated the human." "We all did, Instructor. The question now is what else he's capable of." I was about to find out. Hour 12, and Marcus Webb had turned Korath 9 into what he kept calling a pretty decent campsite. I wanted to throw my data pad across the observation deck. "Daily check-in," his voice crackled through the comm, sounding far too cheerful for someone who should be fighting for survival. "Everything's good here. Found a freshwater stream about half a click north. Tested it, tastes clean. Also spotted some fruit that looks similar to stuff we have back home, so I did a small consumption test. No adverse reactions so far." "Cadet Webb," I said, trying to keep my voice box steady, "you consumed local vegetation? Without molecular analysis? Without toxin screening?" "Yeah. The universal edibility test. You know, check for contact reactions first, then taste a tiny bit. Wait 8 hours, see if anything bad happens. If not, eat a small amount. Wait another 8 hours. Standard wilderness survival protocol from Earth." He paused. "Did they not teach you guys that?" Jorlax was making that chittering sound again. I silenced his comm. "We use scanning equation to determine if substances are safe for consumption," I said. Sure. But what if your scanner breaks? Or you don't have one? Gotta have backup skills, Instructor." On the monitor, I could see him sitting by his fire, apparently comfortable. The temperature had dropped to near freezing as Korath 9's sun set. 1.4 standard gravity meant faster planetary rotation, which meant rapid temperature shifts that most species found debilitating. Marcus had simply added more wood to his fire and wrapped himself in a blanket he'd woven from plant fibers. "In less than 12 hours, your vital signs show minor hypothermic response," I noted, grasping for any sign of struggle. "Yeah, it's a bit chilly. Nothing a good fire won't fix. Honestly, this reminds me of camping in Colorado in October. Same temperature drop at night." I heard him doing something, probably adding fuel to his fire. "Oh, heads up. There was this lizard thing sniffing around my camp earlier. About 2 meters long, had these ridges along its back." My primary heart seized. "Cadet Webb, that was a Korath spine stalker. Class 4 predator. They hunt in packs and can bite through standard body armor." "Huh? Well, I yelled at it and threw a rock. It ran off." "You threw a rock. Intimidation display. Most predators won't risk injury if prey fights back aggressively. Risk-reward analysis, you know. That thing didn't know if I had venom or something, so it decided I wasn't worth the trouble." Another pause. "Should I be worried about it coming back?" I looked at Thalis on the holocron. Her bioluminescent patches were strobing in a pattern I'd never seen, which either meant fascination or an impending medical emergency. "The stalkers typically avoid confrontation with unknown threats," she said slowly, "but they do hunt in packs. If one assessed him and retreated, the others may decide he's not worth pursuing. Or they may decide to test him with greater numbers. You hear that, Cadet Webb? Remain vigilant." "Copy that. I'll keep the fire going. Most animals don't like fire. Instinctive response to potential burns." He sounded like he was settling in for the night. "Signing off for now. Next check-in at 0600. The comm clicked off. 24 hours, I said to Jorlex. "We're barely a third of the way through, and he's comfortable. Your 30 credits are looking shaky, Instructor." I didn't respond. Couldn't. Because Marcus Webb was doing the impossible, making Korath 9 look easy, and every survival principle I'd spent 17 cycles teaching was being casually demolished by a human with a backpack and audacity. Hour 27 brought the first real test. The alarm on my monitoring station shrieked at a frequency that made my auditory membranes ache. Marcus's vitals had spiked, heart rate nearly doubled, adrenaline markers through the ceiling. "Cadet Webb, report," I shouted into the comm. Heavy breathing came through, along with sounds I couldn't immediately identify. crashing, breaking vegetation. A low, rumbling growl that made my survival instincts scream. Bit busy, instructor, Marcus panted. Remember those lizard things? Yeah, they came back. With friends. The video feed showed chaos. 6 Korath spine stalkers had surrounded his camp, and they weren't posturing anymore. These were coordinated killing machines, each one weighing approximately 90 kilograms of muscle, fang and predatory intelligence. Marcus had climbed onto the rock formation he'd camped beside about 4 meters off the ground. Smart. The stalkers couldn't climb sheer rock, but they could wait, and they were waiting, circling below, studying him with those cold reptilian eyes that had evolved to track warm-blooded prey. Cadet Webb, activate your emergency beacon, I ordered. We can have extraction there in 15 minutes. And fail the assessment? No thanks. He was breathing hard but controlled. I've got this. You have 6 apex predators surrounding your position with NO weapons. Incorrect, instructor. I have rocks, fire and a functioning brain. That's 3 weapons. Before I could respond, Marcus grabbed a branch from his woodpile. He'd somehow hauled it up onto the rock with him, and lit one end in the small fire he'd also apparently relocated. He now had a torch, a primitive burning stick. Hey, he shouted at the stalkers, waving the flame. Yeah, you, with the stupid face. Remember me? One of the stalkers hissed, showing rows of serrated teeth designed to tear through flesh. Marcus threw the torch directly at it. The burning branch struck the creature in its snout. Not hard enough to injure, but fire carried a primal terror that transcended species. The stalker shrieked and bolted backward, crashing into 2 of its packmates. That's right, Marcus was yelling now, already lighting another branch. Fire, bad. Humans, scary. Spread the word. He threw the second torch, then a third. Each one accompanied by shouting that my translator was having trouble processing, something about tax returns and student loans that made no contextual sense but sounded intimidating as hell. The stalkers broke formation. One fled entirely. The others backed off, reassessing this strange creature that fought with flame and noise and absolutely zero regard for proper prey behavior. Oh, we're not done. Marcus grabbed a rock, good-sized maybe 2 kilograms, and hurled it with shocking accuracy. It caught a stalker in the shoulder with a crack that made me wince. I can do this all night. I barely slept anyway because you kept making weird clicking sounds. Another rock. This one missed but shattered against the stone near a stalker's head, sending fragments everywhere. The predators exchanged glances. I'd studied Korath stalker behavior extensively, and I'd never seen them do what they did next. They left, not fled, not retreated tactically, they just left. Decided collectively that this particular prey was too much trouble and wandered off into the forest like they had better things to do. Marcus watched them go, still holding a rock, chest heaving. After 30 seconds of silence, he sat down hard on the stone surface. Cadet Webb? I ventured carefully. Still here, instructor? His heart rate was beginning to normalize. Give me a minute. Need to process the adrenaline dump. You successfully defended yourself against 6 Class 4 predators, using rocks and fire, and superior tactical positioning. The high ground matters. He laughed, but it sounded shaky. Man, that got the blood pumping. Haven't had a rush like that since I went hiking in Montana and surprised a grizzly bear. A what? Earth predator. Bigger than those lizard things. About 400 kilograms, can run 50 kilometers per hour. Sometimes they eat people. Jorlax made a sound like choking. And you hike, in areas with these creatures? Voluntarily? Sure, just gotta be smart about it. Make noise so you don't startle them. Carry bear spray. Know how to act if you encounter one. Marcus was climbing down from his rock now, checking his camp. Looks like they scattered my firewood. Gonna need to rebuild. Could have been worse. I stared at the monitor. But this human who'd just fought off a pack of predators with primitive tools and was now worried about his firewood arrangement. Cadet Webb. You performed adequately. Thanks, instructor. Honestly, my dad would have been proud. He always said the best survival tool is staying calm and thinking clearly. Marcus was already gathering scattered branches. Anyway, That was exciting. Think I'll move my sleeping area higher up on the rocks tonight, just in case they get ambitious again. The comm clicked off. Tayless appeared on the holocom, all her patches glowing steady amber. Instructor Vrel, I believe we need to revise our assessment criteria. Commander, that human just demonstrated combat effectiveness against multiple hostiles using only environmental resources. Our standard equipment loadout includes plasma cutters specifically, because we assumed organic beings needed them for defense on Class 12 worlds. She paused. What if we've been over-engineering survival protocols because we've never trained a species that evolved on a Deathworld? I thought about Earth. Class 12 designation, same as Kyrith 9. But from what I'd read, Earth had more variety in threats. Temperature extremes, hostile weather patterns, predators in every ecological niche. Diseases, parasites, plants that could kill you, apparently tiny arachnids that caused neurological damage. Humans hadn't just survived that world, they'd thrived, spread to every corner of it, built civilizations, and apparently they did it while camping for fun. Commander, I think we've been underestimating humans in general. Agreed, and I think your 30 credits are forfeit. He's going to complete this assessment, isn't he? I looked at the monitor. Marcus had his fire rebuilt and was settling in, apparently unconcerned about the fact that he'd just survived a coordinated predator attack. Yes, Commander. I believe he is. Hour 48, and Marcus Webb had essentially set up a vacation home. I'm not exaggerating. While I watched in slowly building disbelief, the human had spent the second day improving his shelter with mud-based insulation, keeps the heat in at night. Instructor constructing a raised platform for food storage keeps it away from scavengers, and building what he called a smokehouse for preserving meat. Where did you get meat? I'd asked, afraid of the answer. Oh, I made a snare trap using vines and caught one of those rabbit things. You know, the six-legged ones with the horns? Pretty tasty, actually. Bit gamey but good protein. Those are Kurath hoppers. They're designated as potentially dangerous due to their defensive spine secretions. Yeah, I noticed the spines. Just avoided those parts when I butchered it. Common sense, really. Common sense. He'd field-dressed an alien creature using common sense. Jorlax had stopped laughing somewhere around hour 36 and now just watched the monitor in silence, occasionally making notes. Commander Thealus had pulled in 3 other senior instructors to observe, and they'd been cycling through various states of disbelief for hours. He's made cordage, noted Instructor Prill, a Vixorian who'd written the manual on improvised tool creation. From plant fibers, the tensile strength appears adequate for load-bearing applications. He's woven a basket, added Instructor Cone, whose species had invented half the survival equipment we used. For carrying water from the stream, the weave pattern is tight enough to prevent seepage. Marcus, oblivious to his growing audience, was now doing something with clay he'd dug from the stream bank. Cadet Webb, what are you constructing now? Oh hey Instructor, just making a basic water filter. Clay, sand, charcoal from the fire, some gravel. Layer it right and you can filter out most particulates and some bacteria. He was packing materials into a woven container suspended over another container. Not as good as boiling but useful if I need water quickly. You learned this where? Middle school science class, I think? Plus my uncle was really into primitive skills. Taught me a bunch of this stuff when I was a kid. He poured water into the top of his contraption. Clear water dripped out the bottom. See? Works pretty well. Prill made a sound like escaping steam. That filtering system is similar to our standard field purification units, which require manufacturing facilities and precision engineering. He built it in 20 minutes with dirt. Earth humans are classified as a Tier 6 intelligence species, Combs said slowly. Same as us. But their practical application skills seem disproportionate. It's the Deathworld evolution, Tallis theorized. They had to develop these skills. Their planet apparently tried to kill them in every biome, every season. They learned or they died. I watched Marcus settle by his fire, eating preserved meat and some kind of root vegetable he'd apparently tested and found edible. He looked happy, relaxed, like he was having exactly the camping trip he'd described. Final assessment phase begins in 24 hours, I said quietly. Our 72 extraction window, assuming he survives until then. You're still assuming he might not? Jorlax asked. I didn't answer, because Marcus Webb had systematically demolished every assumption I'd made about survival requirements, and I was running out of ways to rationalize it. But Korath 9 still had one more test to throw at him, and this one even a human might struggle with. Hour 68, and the storm hit. Korath 9's weather patterns were predictable in their unpredictability. Massive electrical storms rolled through every 30 to 40 hours, bringing winds that could exceed 200 kilometers per hour, lightning that could vaporize organic matter, and rain that fell with enough force to strip foliage. Standard protocol during these storms was to activate environmental shields and wait them out. We'd specifically included shield generators in the equipment loadout for this reason. Equipment Marcus didn't have. Cadet Webb, massive storm system approaching your location, I said, unable to keep the concern from my voice box. Winds will be catastrophic. You need to find shelter immediately. Yeah, I can see the clouds rolling in, pretty intense looking. His voice was calm, too calm. I'm gonna secure my camp and ride it out in the rock formation. There's a crevice about 3 meters deep that should provide good protection. That crevice won't protect you from electrical discharge. The rock composition is high in conductive minerals. Then I'll insulate. Give me 30 minutes. What followed was possibly the most stressful 30 minutes of my career. Marcus systematically broke down his camp with practiced efficiency. Food secured in sealed containers and moved into the crevice. Fire extinguished and covered. Shelter components either weighted down or relocated. He moved fast but precisely, no wasted motion. Then he did something bizarre. He started laying down thick branches in the crevice, creating a floor elevated off the rock. On top of that he placed the woven mat he'd been sleeping on. Then he covered the entire entrance with his original shelter framework, angling it to deflect wind and rain while leaving ventilation gaps. He's creating a Faraday cage, breathed Instructor Prill, or the organic equivalent. The elevated wooden floor insulates him from the rock's conductivity. The angled shelter deflects environmental hazards while maintaining airflow. Can that possibly work? I asked. In theory, yes. In practice against a Class 12 world storm? I don't know. The storm arrived with the subtlety of a military bombardment. Wind speeds exceeded my sensor's measurement capacity. Rain fell horizontally. Lighting struck the rock formation repeatedly, each blast illuminating the darkness like a stuttering sun. The sound alone would have been enough to drive most species into shock. Marcus's vital signs showed elevated stress responses but nothing dangerous. His heart rate was actually lower than it had been during the Stalker attack. Cadet Webb, status report, I demanded over the howling wind. Bit loud in here but I'm okay, he shouted back. Stays pretty dry if I position myself right. Kind of cozy actually. Cozy. In the middle of a storm that was currently turning the surrounding forest into kindling. This is insane, Cone muttered. His species is insane. No, Talis said thoughtfully. They're adapted. Every challenge we've designed to test survival capability, they've encountered some version of on their homeworld. Predators? Earth has them. Temperature extremes? Earth has those too. Storms? Probably worse ones. Earth had hurricanes, I said, pulling up the planetary data I'd been studying. Tropical cyclones, with wind speeds exceeding 300 kilometers per hour. Tornadoes, typhoons, lightning storms that could level forests. I looked at the monitor showing Marcus's calm heartbeat. This storm is terrifying to US. To him it's probably just weather. We watched for 3 hours as Korath 9 threw everything it had at one fragile human with no equipment. Lighting struck within meters of his position. Wind tore apart the forest around him. Rain that could strip paint off our shuttle hammered the landscape. Marcus stayed in his crevice, occasionally adjusting his shelter, otherwise just waiting it out. When the storm finally passed, he emerged, checked his surroundings, and started rebuilding his fire. Well, that was exciting, he said over the comm like he'd just watched entertainment instead of surviving a catastrophe. Lost some of my food storage, but the main camp's intact. Should be good for the final stretch. I looked at the chronometer. 4 hours until the 72-hour mark. 4 hours until extraction. 4 hours during which Marcus Webb would almost certainly complete the most unorthodox survival assessment in coalition history. Instructor Vrele, Thelis said quietly, when he passes, and he will pass, we need to completely revise our training protocols. If one human can do this, imagine what a fully equipped human could accomplish. I thought about that, about Marcus with actual equipment, with weapons, with technology. Then I thought about Earth. That Class 12 Deathworld that had somehow produced a species that considered camping on equally deadly planets to be fun. Commander, I said slowly, I think we should be very glad humans joined the coalition as allies. Agreed. Very glad indeed. On the monitor, Marcus was humming something while he worked on his fire. He sounded happy.